Hi everyone, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here with another PB&J video. And today I am continuing in my stART stamping video series. This is video number 2 out of 10. And today's video is all about using an easy card sketch that is great with any of your critter stamps, or if you're not into critters, you could definitely use florals or any other type of focal point image there, but I'm going to be focusing on critter stamps, and there's just a tiny peek at the 4 cards that we will be making today. Now, my sort of purpose in this stART stamping video series is to be able to share my entire creative process as a professional designer to really help you start enjoying your hobby with less decision fatigue, start collecting products that you know you will use and love, and also to use your stash. I love that Penny Black products are really timeless, and I can go back to products that are years old and still love the result when I use them now. Now, one of my favorite places to start, especially if I'm stuck and I don't know what to do, is to just use a sketch. And this is a really great one, like I said, if you have some critter stamps that you want to use. And here is a look at the sketch and then a finished card where you can see the whole card following that sketch. So this is my design process, sort of my creative process. Hopefully the process will also inspire you in addition to the products and projects. So I first start by selecting my supplies and really limiting the supplies that I'm using. So instead of looking at a blank card and wondering what to do, I start by grabbing the products I want to use. And for this, I really wanted to use these new critter stamps by Penny Black. They are listed and linked for you down in the YouTube description box below. And then to go with those, I reached into my stash to find some very subtle background-ish stamps that I thought would go with these. So I have this skyline stamp that I thought would go well with the bear with the balloons. And I grabbed the Life's Journals because it's got like a little bookmark or old style book checkout background to go with the bear on the books. This is feathery, and I felt like that went really well with that bear holding the flower. And then for the bear with the butterflies, I grabbed this picturesque stamp. So these are all stamps from my stash, all Penny Black, listed and linked down below. But again, I love that I can mix the old with the new, and they're all classic and work well. And what I do is I gather my supplies, I limit them, and I put them into just like a little photo box. And if you watch video number 1, that's the same photo box. So when I finish, I clear it out and I'm ready to start again. Now I also grabbed a die set, the stitched circles. As you can see, I'm real fancy with how I store my supplies. I just use envelopes and write on the front. And I know that will work well for the sketch, so I've got it into my box. After I've done that, I'm ready for die cutting. And I just enjoy a very decisionless die cutting session, especially with a sketch. It's going to tell me exactly where to put it. And so I'm just going to sit and die cut, listen to a podcast, or you could watch a show and just crank with the die cutting machine. I'm just going to run that through the machine, and you can see there you get that great stitch circle. I did it off of the edge. I think that just adds a little extra interest to the sketch and the finished card design. And in that goes into my box. I also have cut the sort of background panels, and I put those in an envelope into the box too. So during that die cutting session, I also do any kind of paper trimming that I think I might need. Now I move on to stamping, and I like to try to do at least my focal point stamping as batch stamping. So sitting down and stamping out all of the focal points before starting each card. So I am using Canson 140-pound watercolor paper, and I am stamping this using Memento ink in the color of Toffee Crunch. And I do have all of the supplies I'm using listed for you down in that YouTube description box below. Colors, inks, and stamps and dies. Now for these bears, after stamping in that lighter colored ink, I do like to take a fine tip black marker. This is a Faber-Castell PITT Artist pen, which is waterproof, and just get their eyes and their nose and any little details like on the flowers that need darkening up, and I do that as part of that stamping process. So I went ahead and stamped all of the ones and added that black outlining where I wanted it all at once in my batch stamping. I put them back into my box, and then whenever I can get to it, I can start adding color. So if you've done all of your stamping, just use the ink that you know will work with the coloring medium that you like. I'm going to paint these using Arteza watercolors from the tube, and I'm just putting them into a palette. I picked these just to switch things up a little bit. I love watercoloring. I find it's like the easiest coloring for me to do, and actually the fastest for me usually. And I'm just preparing the palette, but you could use whatever you like. If you like to use Copics, if you like to use colored pencils, just grab whatever you love. If you have something new that you're wanting to try, maybe you put that into your box when you are pulling your supplies so you remember or you actually get to using it with this project. Now I'm ready to paint. This also works really well, as I mentioned in the previous video, if you're working in a small space, because you can get out your die cutting, do your die cutting, and put that away. You can then get out the stuff for your stamping, do all your stamping, and then put that away and kind of work on just one small surface, which is what I do. I actually have just a closet that I work in. That's my cloffice, as people say, and it works great for me. And I actually think having to limit things, having to work smaller, work sort of group projects like this has made me more creative, and I get more done than having a huge space and the overwhelming like decision fatigue, more decisions to make. But I also think it's why I've sort of developed this creative process. So I'm just painting in the bear here. I love how the Toffee Crunch ink really softens them, and that's another reason I really like using these watercolors. I think they have a soft look, which for these teddy bears just feels like they would be soft. They're so cute. So you can see I put the darker color on, then I rinse off my brush, get it still a little bit wet, but before I bring it to the paper, I pat it on a paper towel, which is off screen there. That way when I bring my brush to the paper, it is not dripping wet. So that is a little tip there, is don't always have like a little paper towel or something there that you can make sure that you're coming to your paper with a damp brush instead of a really wet brush, that's especially if your watercolor feels like it's kind of out of control as you are putting it on. These little bears are so fun to color. All of the penny black critters are really fun to color, and I find they're just such a joyful thing to have. To spend a little bit of time coloring something so whimsical and fun is so nice. By pre-stamping all of these, you can come to it. Maybe you just color one every night of the week, and on the weekend you put them together. Or you work like Monday you do your die cutting, and Tuesday you do your stamping. Wednesday nights you do your coloring, or when your show is on you do your coloring. You can structure it however it works for you, but it gets you started, it gets you in there really using the things that you've purchased and that you love and enjoying your hobby without it having to be, at least for me, I find sometimes just looking at the blank card thinking, what am I going to make, is really difficult. But breaking it down like this, I find I make a lot more and enjoy it a lot more. Now up on this flower, I'm doing a mix of reds and a mix of yellows, going back in and layering even a little bit of pink. And I have all of these exact colors of these watercolors listed down in that YouTube description box below. I'm not worried that if I'm going to go out of the lines, because I am going to cut this out. So that makes the painting a little bit easier as well. And then this will be the process that I will do to paint in the other bears. And I use the same palette for all of them, the same palette of colors. But I'm just showing you one bear. Now I did decide to go in and darken up just a few spots, and I think that really finished off this bear. It was looking just a little too washed out. So that's one thing I love about watercolors. I think it's really forgiving, and you can often go back in and just layer up more color. I start light and then darken things up as I go, because sometimes it's hard to take away color, but you can always add a little bit more. Now, once I finish painting all of these, I put them right back into that box that you saw at the beginning. And then they're ready for the next step when the time comes. So I'm almost done with this guy, and I will paint the others off camera and then add them to the box. And then what I do is then whenever I have another free moment, I just do some fussy cutting. Or if you're using exact match dies, these stamps don't have exact match dies, but many do, then this is the time where you could go in and just do like a cutting session. And I actually find when I fussy cut like this, where I have a whole bunch to do, I turn on a show or a movie and just cut them as I go. It's actually very enjoyable. Once everything's cut up, then it's time to assemble. So just playing with the elements you've already prepared, or adding finishing touches or some background stamping, which you'll see me doing here. So I have all of these things ready to go. They're in my box, and I can just start playing around now with how I want this bear to fit inside the circle. I have the sketch to guide me, but always know I can always go to my stash, get something else out that isn't in the box, sort of make a last minute decision. That's totally fine too. The whole idea is just to get started. So I went ahead and laid that die cut piece over my background just to give myself an idea of where I needed to paint this background, so I didn't paint more than I needed to. And this is a time where I may go back to painting or even die cutting or stamping, you'll see. But to me, this feels like sort of the finishing painting or the finishing stamping because it's part of the background. I'm doing this with those same watercolors, but this would also be a really great place to use like your distress inks and an ink blending tool and a foam pad if you wanted to ink that background. But I again wanted that really soft look, and now I'm going to stamp that. So I had pulled these stamps that I thought would work well with those images, so now I can just grab them from the box. I don't have to make this decision now. It's already made, it's already right there. And I am stamping that in my MISTI stamp positioning tool. All of the ink colors are listed down in that YouTube description box. And I'm just putting the bear back on there to see if I thought it was dark enough or I wanted to darken it up just a little bit more. Then I actually just slightly moved that feathery stamp over, and I'm stamping it again so that there's just a little bit more in that background. Now I did the same thing on this skyline stamp, but I wanted to show you if you stamp something and it just feels like too dark. When I finish this, I'm like, oh, this is distracting from the bear. I am actually just put a little bit of white acrylic paint onto a piece of scratch paper. You could use a palette, and I'm using a damp brush, picking that up, and I even used my finger at the beginning and painting over the top of this, and it's just going to kind of push that more into the background. It's also a way to lighten up stamping that you've done if you've gone too heavy and it's in the background. Now I can go ahead, I've stamped all my backgrounds, I can go ahead and assemble the cards. I'm going to wrap this with some May Arts twine and just tape it in the back. I'm putting foam squares on that and laying it over the top of that panel, that background panel. Now this is just a card panel, so I would add it to an actual card base later on. I find it's just easier to work on the panels and I don't get the actual card itself inky or smudged. I've stamped my sentiment on a little tag, kind of going along with that sketch. And again, the sketch makes it easy. I don't have to decide where should I put the sentiment. It's already kind of letting me know where to fit that in. I added glue at the top of the tag, and I just freehand cut that tag, and then foam square at the bottom of it just to give it some dimension, and then I will glue on a little bow. I find that's easier than trying to tie it on. I can tie it separately, and it's easier for me to make it pretty and then glue it onto the card. And then I can put some foam squares on my bear and pop them up inside of that circular element. So I followed that assembly step for all of the cards. So I'll give you a look here at all of these cards. These were so fun to create, and I hope this sketch is inspiring to you as well. either to use with these new teddy bear stamps or to use with what you already have, or maybe you add just one set that you want to explore. But I did 4 cards with this sketch and with these dies and stamps. Just a fun little set. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, click that little bell so you'll be notified when video number 3 of this Start Stamping series is available. And I thank you so much for watching. You can also connect with Penny Black and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as our blog and our website, where we post lots and lots of new card ideas every day. Happy stamping!